Welcome back. The people who have the power to put you behind bars, they also have to play politics. For an in-depth look at this, I recently sat down with the director of Prosecutors and Politics Project and UNC law professor Carissa Byrne Hessick.
Professor Hessick, the first most important question I have is, why are prosecutors important? What's their role? Why are we talking about them? Why are they important?
Yeah, I think most Americans don't understand that prosecutors, they're more than just functionaries. It's not just that every single case that comes through the door gets worked on by their office and brought to a judge. They have a lot of decisions to make about which cases to pursue in the first place. America sort of has both too many laws on the books and then also, frankly, too many crimes happening for every single crime to get prosecuted. So this question, what to pursue, we usually call it prosecutorial discretion, is a big power that prosecutors exercise and most Americans don't know about.
So in your work, you've been studying prosecutorial politics and the role that politics plays, because prosecutors have to go to the voters and ask for their vote in many states. And so many of the court cases in this country are in state courts, which we've also talked about here. But how did we even get to a place where we decided electing prosecutors is what made sense? In the federal system, they're, of course, appointed by the president and then confirmed by the Senate. So there's a little bit of a role of the democratic process there, but not directly from the voters. So how did we even get here?
Yeah, we've actually been doing this for a really long time. So 45 states elect their prosecutors. And it started really when Andrew Jackson was in office, and there was this big push for more democracy, more popular democracy. So a number of states decided to start electing their judges and electing their prosecutors. And there's a great history that was written on this about 15 years ago. And there's actually quite a lot of discussion in these big sort of state conventions about why it's important to elect the judges. And then they just seem to have thrown prosecutors in there for good measure. But basically the arguments that they see were they didn't like the fact that prosecutors were being appointed, both because they were concerned about local communities having more control, but also because they thought the appointment process was corrupt, right? That it was all about political cronies and not necessarily about who would listen to the local community and who would be best for the job. So that's how it happened. It's been happening for a long time, which I always find really interesting, because I think people more broadly have only started talking about prosecutor elections in relatively recent years.
Given that this is an area of expertise, do you have thoughts on that being our process? Is there a better way, or is this perhaps just the way that we have and it serves its purpose?
I think it's complicated. When I started looking into this, I thought I'd learn a little bit and then have a pretty clear opinion on that. But I don't. It's hard to say. If we're going to give our prosecutors as much power as we do in terms of which cases to pursue, what sort of plea bargains to offer, when to invoke mandatory minimum laws, like all of these big things that fit under that umbrella of prosecutorial discretion, it's probably a good idea for us to have a very clear sense of what's happening and how they're using that power. And elections arguably are designed to do that. Unfortunately, one thing that I've found in doing this research on prosecutors and prosecutor elections is that the elections don't necessarily seem to be serving that function, at least outside of sort of big population areas like big cities. Usually that office, there's only one candidate running. There's not a lot of discussion in the media about what that candidate does. Even when you have contested elections, a lot of the media coverage talks about one particular case or, what's the relationships like within the office, and they don't talk about policies about how that prosecutorial power gets exercised. So I guess that's a sort of long way of saying, in theory, I think elections could be a very good way for the local communities to have input into how these important decisions are being made, but it's not clear that that's actually what's happening in practice.
We have just under a minute, but quickly at the end, we have an election coming up in Maryland. Obviously, there's not as much access to information necessarily about prosecutor elections, but what can people look for when they're trying to decide who fits the bill for their beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, I would really recommend that people try to go to debates. Actually, you know, we recently had an election here for the first time in many years, and we set up a debate here at the law school where I work. These are local elections, and so these candidates don't have the same sort of national or state platforms that other candidates do. And so they're pretty receptive to that. And so you can ask them a lot of questions. So that's my recommendation. It's local. It's supposed to be about local control. So be involved in your local community. Send letters, write letters to the editor, even ask to have them come speak to you or a community group.
Perhaps we'll have to have a debate here on our show as we approach the election. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. We appreciate your insights.
More still to come tonight in the courts. Don't go away.